let's go, because you know what I came here to do.
I don't get paid for overtime. I'm here to fight.
There's AJ. I don't think he was out there for the Spence fight, but on his Instagram, he's in Las Vegas. You can see the location on the photo. And everybody's been commenting how shredded he looks, but there's nothing really unusual about that with AJ. The photo says he's in Las Vegas. Was he training in Vegas? Was he training in Texas? Both of them places are pretty hot right now. Maybe he's just sweating a lot, getting the pounds off, and that's why he looks shredded. The weigh-in will tell us what we need to know, I'm guessing. Some people are going to be speculating, oh no, he's hitting the big weights again, and that's no good. The lactic acid will lead to fatigue, and he'll tire out, etc., etc. Well, we'll see. I wonder what shape Dillian is in. You know what I mean? Like, I saw a little glimpse on the face-off, which hasn't been televised yet, and Dillian is still wearing the shades. And there was a little exchange where Dillian must have said he's going to knock AJ out with one punch, and AJ was like, what, you knocked me out with one punch?
To knock me down for the 10 count. Have me out, no way.
Of course I can. I almost did last time. That's what you bring to a firefight, bro. Water.
Yeah, but good
Are
luck.
you stupid? You don't bring fire to a firefight, bro. You bring water. So you don't
want to shake my hand?
Dillian wearing the shades. I don't believe he wants AJ to look directly into his eyes. AJ's knocked him out spectacularly already, and he has a psychological advantage on Dillian. I believe that. I do believe that. I've already tipped AJ to win, so that's no big shock to nobody. Most people have. Derrick James, his fighter, lost on Saturday night US time. He was on the plane on Monday, heading over to the UK. And it could go two ways. Maybe he's a little despondent, and it could hurt how he communicates with AJ. Or maybe this is an ideal situation for him, that he doesn't get a chance to ponder on what went wrong. He certainly won't want two losses on the bounce. He'll be determined that AJ leaves that ring a winner. But then again, so will Buddy McGirt with Dillian.
Can you make it clear as to why Conor Benn has been cleared to fight as it was?
No, I mean, as you know, and one thing that's important is absolutely not our rules. The whole case is completely confidential, so much so that I'm not involved in the case, and Conor Benn's not allowed to talk about it, UKAD's not allowed to talk about it. What Conor Benn was, that they did was he wrote to UKAD and said, I'm going to announce the decision, and therefore UKAD commented on that press release by Conor Benn, which is quite unusual for them to do so. What I can tell you is that Conor Benn was suspended. His suspension has been lifted.
The media, the public, they seem to want this case to just continually be subject to giving them answers.
You want answers?
We're about to apply to the British Boxing Board of Control for a licence, but obviously until that time passes, you can imagine what's going on at the moment. I mean, you know how boxing works. Imagine the phone calls that are being made right now by people with agendas. Dude, don't do this, do that. So, like, who knows what's going to happen?
I was searching for where UKAD said they were likely to appeal the ban. I couldn't find that anywhere. And what would they be appealing? They lifted the ban, and now they're going to appeal against their decision, literally. Make it make sense. I think I heard that the British Boxing Board of Control could appeal the ban, but UKAD appealing the ban when they lifted it.
The head crack, the head crack, the head crack.
So according to Eddie, neither UKAD or Conor can talk about the case. UKAD are now in possession of the dossier. So if it's confidential, the media have no right to it. And me and you certainly don't have no business inquiring what's in the dossier. I'm not an expert on what protocol with UKAD is. I'm not. But there has to come a time where it's constraint of trade if you can't get a British boxing license. How long is it that some of you want him to be out the ring? Conor spent money to get that dossier drafted up. I can't believe that some of you believe that you need to see what's in it. Maybe you just have too much of a high inflated value of who you are. Maybe you're nuts. He's gave it to UKAD, VADA and the WBC. You know, the likes of Piers Morgan, Simon Jordan, Spencer Oliver, they said, give the dossier to UKAD if you're clean. And he's done that.
Adam Catterall needs to understand one thing. You wanted him to go through the UKAD process. He did it. Suspension lifted, cleared to box.
They cleared him to fight, but you guys want to extract blood from out of a stone. Nothing will satisfy you. Nothing. The only thing that will satisfy you is to see his career totally ruined. What can you or me do with the dossier that UKAD, VADA and the WBC couldn't? Do we know what we're reading? Or how to read what we're reading? Are we not a little out of our depth? What do you reckon? Do you really need to see that dossier for anything apart from you being nosy or wanting to start trouble? They've lifted the suspension. Give it a rest, man. In the video before this, I was discussing Jason Cunningham, who was knocked out badly by Zolani Tete last year, and he tested pre-fight. The confidentiality laws allowed him to go in the ring and knock my guy out brutally. He had to consider retirement. You heard Steffi Ball talking about the devastation of the loss, and to find out later, Jason was going in there with a dirty athlete. Just this Saturday, he was knocked out in a round. Arguably, he hasn't recovered from that devastating defeat to Tete. I don't see the outrage from nobody. Why? Because he's just a domestic fighter? He doesn't count? But you claim you want to know what's in the dossier for the good of the sport. But I guess Jason Cunningham don't count unless Simon Jordan brings him up. Because a lot of people are just reactionaries and sheep and troublemakers. You know, Eddie didn't even allow Conor confidentiality. As soon as they found out that he popped, they went straight to the board with it. Eubank was never in danger. Even when he found out Conor popped, he still wanted to fight him. The board had to eventually silence the fight when the mole came out, but they were going to let it go ahead too. Eubank was never in danger. That fight never got in the ring. But we've got fighters in the UK juiced up, going in the ring without their opponents knowing. I don't see the outrage. I've not once seen it. I don't see these people or Simon Jordan. I've never seen the outrage from them once. Not once. If TalkSport and other media outlets didn't overdo their negative coverage, their biased coverage against Conor, a lot of people wouldn't be talking about the case as negatively as they have. That's the truth. Oscar Valdez tested positive, didn't spend a day in suspension, didn't lose his titles. Huey Fury got a backdated ban, which would suggest they're going to retroactively ban him for all the time he was inactive while they investigated. But he fought all through that period. He was never banned. You don't want to see the paperwork, how the British Boxing Board of Control or the Commission in America came by these decisions? You're not interested in it. Why? Because it's not a big story driven by TalkSport. A lot of people know they're frauds. They know they're reactionary. They know they're sheep. Shit starters. And I think people like me, we spoil the fun with our receipts and shit like that. We spoil the fun. People talking about strict liability. Well, UKAD didn't pop him for one. He passed all the UKAD testing. All of it. UKAD looked at the dossier and lifted the ban. And I'll conclude it like this. I don't know if that kid took PEDs or not. How would I know? I know it's time for him to get back in the ring though. Roy and Eubank have split. I don't know how amicable the split. In public, there seems to be no animosity, but Roy was saying that Eubank wouldn't sacrifice, move from Vegas and come to Florida and train. He's got fighters he can't abandon in Florida. He's saying he'd get more for training Eubank, but he's committed to training these fighters in Florida. He also said David Hayes in the setup, he should get David Hay to train him. Eubank has went for a few trainers now, trained himself. Does he bring back his dad in the setup? I don't know where it goes. The split to me comes as no shock, because as soon as a fighter loses these days, we've always got one eye open on the situation with his trainer, if he's going to be around for the next fight. And the brutal nature of how the fight concluded, it's no shock really. It's no shock. I don't believe Roy and, I have to train these guys in Florida. I'm not saying they're not important. They have careers. But would he not want to finish what he and Chris started? Considering you're the coach and your reputation's on the line, would he not want to avenge that loss alongside Chris? I believe he would. I believe there's more to it than what's in the public domain. Doesn't seem that long ago where they seemed really tight. It doesn't seem that big a compromise that Chris wouldn't travel to Florida if he wanted Roy to train him, or Roy wouldn't move to Las Vegas or Brighton or wherever Chris is training if they really both wanted the same thing, the same result, and that's to avenge that loss to Liam Smith. I don't know the authenticity of the doctor on BDA Boxing, but he's making an assessment without actually diagnosing Errol Spence, saying he has neurological issues. He wouldn't have passed him to fight Terence Crawford, and I'm assuming he wouldn't have passed him to fight Danny Garcia or Ugas either. Why I'm questioning the authenticity of what was said on the BDA podcast is For you to pass or not pass him, you'd have to run tests, wouldn't you? And if he passed all the neurological assessments and brain scans, wouldn't you have to pass him? He seemed to be going by what he looked like post the Lambo incident where he flipped it over. I mean, there are some conditions, if you're a doctor, you can see by just looking at the person. And they don't have to be external conditions. They can look at your tongue and see if you have certain conditions. The eyes, certain rashes on your face or discolorations around your face or body could be an indicator that all might not be well. He said the glassy look in his eyes showed him that he had neurological issues. Would he have piped up if Errol Spence had dominated the fight? Where was he after the Ugas or Danny Garcia fight? Because he was going by what Errol Spence looked like post-flipping the Lambo. But he won them fights. So nobody's bringing up neurological issues. Nobody's bringing up if he was drained because he won them fights. Because now he's lost, we're getting a full autopsy. But he's passed all his medicals in the 3 fights he's had since flipping over the Lambo. Passed all his brain scans. Flipped over the Lambo in October 2019. There was a lot of speculations whether he'd box again, looking at the facial injuries. No broken bones. In hindsight, we could ask, what was he doing in the ring barely a year after such a horrific situation with the Lambo? Yeah, he was back in the ring a lot earlier than most expected, there's no doubt about that. But I'm sure they checked him over thoroughly in the hospital. And like I said, he's passed all his brain scans and all his medicals, or he wouldn't have been allowed in the ring. Unless him being one of the more popular PBC fighters meant they had to find ways around getting him into the ring, even if he couldn't get past the medicals, if you get what I'm saying. You know, Jermain Taylor, 2 stoppage defeats in 2007, one to Kelly Pavlik, the other one to Carl Froch. In 2009, in the super middleweight Super 6, he was knocked out by Arthur Abraham. That was in Germany. When he was checked over, they found memory loss, subdural hematoma, brain bleed, concussion. Lou Debella made a big Grammy award-winning speech that he's not going to promote Jermain Taylor no more. He's sad for the family and all this and that. By 2011, Jermain Taylor wanted to box again, and guess who was promoting him? Lou Debella. Now, just because the hematoma, the brain bleeds came up in 2009 when they checked him over, it doesn't mean necessarily when he comes back in 2011 they're still going to be there. That, however, doesn't mean he's in condition to fight. Boxers have to have regular MRIs, and are they high-tech enough to detect memory loss, or do they have to do further tests or use more advanced equipment to detect that? What about mood swings? Did the MRI detect that? Lou promoted him 5 more times between 2011 and 2014, and the last fight he had was for the vacant IBF title against Sam Sullivan for Australia. Sam injured his leg and he kept going down, and Jermain won a UD. He didn't defend that title because his life was spiraling out of control. Even while he was awaiting that fight for the vacant title against Sullivan, he was having issues. And he wasn't right. Everyone knew he wasn't right. But Al Heyman and Lou Debella kept promoting him. But with Jermain Taylor, he had a history. He was knocked out 3 times. This was the first time Errol Spence was in any serious distress for his pro career. So while there might not be a lot to attribute to what's happened to him in the ring, why he might have neurological issues, was the flipping over of the Lambo more serious than what we might know? Is there a cover-up trying to hide how badly he really was injured in the Lambo? And with all this coming out, most people haven't seen such a one-sided beating and such a highly anticipated fight that a lot of people had as a 50-50. And then the fight is totally one-sided. Does Errol Spence really go back in the ring against Terence Crawford in December? After that performance? After all this stuff is coming out now? I mean, I was on a podcast with Lady Chan, and one of his fans, before, maybe he saw the BDA video first, actually. Maybe he saw the video first. And he was saying, oh, I believe he's got neurological issues. Now, if they pitch him in there in December and it goes left, I'm not going to elaborate on what I mean by that. It goes left. And that's not me trying to cause mass hysteria. That's Terence Crawford's hands leading to this conclusion if it goes left. We've already saw what he done once. And trust me, once Spence feels his power, once he loses his shape, feels Terence's power, feels the dominance, this fight is going the same way. Unless Errol can pull out one single punch and incapacitate Bud or knock him out, he can't beat Bud Crawford. I said that without the knowledge of what I witnessed on Saturday, and I'm saying it again. Tim Bradley, he fought Ruslan Provodnikov in 2013 in a welterweight classic. This is what I'm saying about Stephen Jackson questioning Tim Bradley's resume. Look at these names, man. Lamont Peterson, and this is a better Lamont Peterson than what Errol Spence fought. Nate Campbell, Kendall Holt, Edna Cherry, Junior Witter, Miguel Vasquez, Carlos Abregu, Devin Alexander, Yoel Casamayo, Manny Pacquiao, Ruslan Provodnikov, Juan Manuel Marquez. Yo, Stephen, don't do it, bro. Don't do it. He fought Ruslan Provodnikov in 2013 in an absolute classic. He admitted he was dizzy from the headshots post-fight. He had to come back from a concussion. Freddie Roach said, I worry about Tim Bradley going into this fight. This is just before the Marquez fight, 7 months after he fought Provodnikov. Freddie said, I worry about Tim Bradley going into this fight sometimes because I know he had some concussions in the last fight, said Freddie Roach, who trained Provodnikov. You see the results of these football players and hockey players while having problems and so forth. Roach saw himself in Bradley. Roach was a tough fighter, like they're saying. He also had a never say quit attitude and would mix it up in the ring frequently, absorbing numerous blows. Now, Roach never had half the defense that Bradley had. And they're saying that his Parkinson's is attributed to a lot of the punishment he took as a fighter. They were also talking about Bradley's speech. It took him a long time to get his regular speech patterns back after the Provodnikov fight. It was a strange fight, a great fight, but Tim just wanted to exchange with Provodnikov, which was clearly the wrong fight. And perhaps it was Provodnikov who forced him into them exchanges, more than Tim actually wanting to brawl. Let me just say this. Ruslan Provodnikov. I still love watching that guy fight, man. He just bought it. He just bought it. Win, lose or draw, he just bought it. And that was an evenly contested fight that could have went either way. What we witnessed on Saturday was a one-sided slaughter. Tim had 7 months to prepare for the Marquez fight. After the war with Provodnikov, Errol Spence has 3 months to prepare for Terence Crawford. And no disrespect to Marquez, his prime years were lightweight and super feather. I don't know what to put it down to. Is it bravado? Yeah, we can prepare for Crawford in 3 months after what we witnessed on Saturday. You know, I was dismissing the guy on Lady Chan's Hangout. He was a Spence fan. He was saying, I think it's a cash grab. I think it was a cash grab Saturday. But thinking about it now, you know, Errol's already beat Porter, Danny, Ugas. There was nowhere else to go. And while I won't call it a cash grab because it was for undisputed, the rematch certainly sounds like a cash grab. I thought Al Haymon was looking out for his fighters. If he was looking out for his fighters, I'm not saying let's totally just piss the Crawford rematch off. You gotta give him at least till next spring to prepare for that, so he could perhaps fit in a tune-up and get himself ready as he can be. Now, obviously a rematch clause will only have a certain amount of shelf life before Terence has the option to walk away from it. And he only has 3 fights on that PBC contract, and there's 2 left. So it looks like they want to get Errol in there very quickly. Or is it Errol's decision? Yeah, I could theorize that they're cashing out a damaged goods Errol Spence. Yes. At the same time, they want to make sure they put Crawford in some real fights so they can get some cash back. The Jermell Charlo fight would have been ideal, but he's fighting Canelo next. Not that Crawford's taking any notice of that. During the massacre on Saturday, he turned his attentions to Charlo in the crowd and said, "You're next," before going back into the fray to torment Errol some more. So the next best is Errol Spence. Deontay Wilder's too big for him. It's Errol Spence. Hey, Crawford won't mind that fight one bit. He won't mind it one bit. You know, he says he never underestimates no opponents, and I don't doubt that. But he'll be looking forward to some more light work with Errol Spence, especially in 3 months. They're talking about Boots versus Crawford. Isn't he more TGB than PBC? No real money in that fight. It's not happening next. Terence should sign up to fight Spence 2 more times for them last 2 fights and step to Al Haymon and tell him,
It's Friday night, ain't a damn thing funny. You better have my money.